welcome to a special midweek episode of the Right and the Gary Kellys podcast. On today's show, we're going to take a look back on the Newcastle game. We're going to dig a little deeper into the San Francisco 49ers investment that's been announced this week. We'll give you a chance to win a voucher for the Terrace in our Mystery Voice competition, and we'll wrap up with a good old game of Guess Who. On today's panel, we've got both Matts with me, so Matt BB and Matt M. How are you doing, guys?
All good.
Yeah, doing really well, Vicky, thanks.
So a trip up to St James's yesterday saw us come home with all 3 points, thankfully. A big win given our recent form and results, I think. But Newcastle didn't make it easy for us, did they? Or should I say we didn't make it easy for ourselves?
It was a classic game of two halves. We had 45 minutes of Bielsa ball and 45 minutes of something not recognisable as football. But yeah, we didn't help ourselves, no.
We just seem to make teams look good as well, don't you think? Because people were coming away from it saying, "Oh, Newcastle looked like they had a bit about them," and they've been absolutely dire for quite a while now, haven't they? Bless them. So yeah, it was interesting. It was like you say, it was a tough game to watch at times. We made it harder than what it should have been, but you've got to look at the two goals were absolutely outstanding, and you put that in any game of football and you'd be absolutely applauding it left, right and centre because it was absolutely class. And how cool was Jack Harrison on that second goal? Like, cool as a cucumber, wasn't he?
All the time in the world, it looked like, didn't it? He really was one of those pick your spot type moments, and that sort of impudent, sort of off the laces type of thing. You just love that, don't you? He looked like he was ready for bed after he scored, though. He just looked exhausted, I thought.
Yeah, he kind of run himself into the ground to get there, I think, hadn't he? And then I think he was just really grateful to see it go in the net.
Yeah.
Although if I'm a Newcastle fan, I'm pretty annoyed at the defending for that goal. I watched it back this morning, and when Jack gets the ball, I think they just assume that he was going to cross it because the two closest defenders made no effort whatsoever to get anywhere near him.
No, they didn't. They just dropped tools, didn't they? Completely dropped tools. I think with it Lascelles, I think he cut into the middle, didn't he? Expected a ball to whip in the centre of the box, and I think is it Lewis or Sherlock? I think one of them two. Yeah, you're right. They just completely dropped their heads, didn't they, and just allowed it to happen. But like Matt said, he had all the time in the world. Great finish. And don't take away Rafinha's as well. A lot's been said about Rafinha, Rodrigo, and Harrison last night. All three were absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw a bit of this on Twitter that Sam Maximan really impressed me in the Newcastle side. If I'm not going to say when, because that would be cruel, but if Newcastle were to get into trouble, I'd say someone we should look at. So they do have still some good attacking players in their side. You just wonder, if they got a decent manager, if they could do something a bit more impressive than what they were offering up in the first half. But yeah, defensively, they offered nothing. And speaking to my lads last night, they asked me, are we the two worst teams in the Premier League before it? But I should point out they're 7 and 9. I said, no, we are far superior to Newcastle, thank you. You wouldn't have known it in the second half, would you?
No, I mean, it was a bit more of a battle in the second half, wasn't it? But one of my colleagues is a Newcastle fan, and I think by the sounds of things, they're just really frustrated because, like you say, they've got quality. And if it was the right manager coming in, then they probably could get something decent out of them. But I think playing them, we've probably timed it right just before Steve Bruce gets the hook and they get someone in that knows what they're doing.
Gary Monk's free, isn't he? Is he still available?
Oh, still allowed in football.
Big name become available from a certain London club as well, haven't I? Wonder how many weeks he lasted at Newcastle.
That's true. Wonder. Diego Llorente back into defence last night for all of 8 minutes, I think it was, before he was feeling his hamstring. Poor lad cannot catch a break, can he? Bielsa was saying in his post-match presser that he's concerned how another potential long-term injury is going to affect him mentally. But I guess from a team perspective, is it strike back into that starting 11 and a youngster on the bench?
Yeah, it's got to be, hasn't it? I feel really sorry for him, actually. We did an article on writingthegarykellys.com. Llorente is effectively the new signing that we've needed this January transfer window. Obviously he's only played a cameo role against Chelsea and that's it, and I think a couple of under-23 appearances. So we were really excited to see him, and I think a lot of the fans were, because we genuinely feel he could be that kind of long-term centre-back partnership. And just to see him just kind of on his haunches, just head down, feeling his hamstring, you just feel sorry for him, don't you? Because he had a cracking game in the under-23s the other week, or the other day, sorry. And he looked like he could have a good spell in the team, but something's not right, is it? Are we rushing him back? Probably, you could say it could be the case, but is it an option where striker will come in? But do we need to strengthen in that area? I think we spoke about it last week on the podcast. It is something that we particularly might need to look at. Berardi's back full training. By all accounts, he will not be ready for Premier League football anytime soon, I don't think. So, yeah, I think we've still got that question marks over our defence, and with Llorente unfortunately going down against Newcastle, I think we potentially might need to look at probably a short-term loan probably till the end of the season, I'd say.
I don't disagree with any of that. There was sort of this inevitability to it, wasn't there? You all saw Llorente there, and you really, really wanted him to have a good game, but you had a niggling feeling in the back of your mind, as we've had so often with certain Leeds players over the years who were so injury prone, that if he was going to get injured, it was going to be something fairly major. He sailed through the under-23s game. He ran around, didn't he, like an 18-year-old. So you were thinking there's ostensibly nothing wrong with him. He must be approaching full fitness, and he really has been sort of cosseted by the medical team to sort of get back to match fitness. But as you say, you've seen him crumpled in a heap. I think Bielsa is right. Psychologically, it's going to be tough when you're playing with an injury. It does affect you. Will we sign centre back? No. Will we get one on loan? No. I honestly think that this is the one thing. Love Bielsa, but he would rather sort of struggle through with I don't know, a left winger or a number 10 playing at centre half than bring someone else into his special little group. And it's really frustrating, because you can see sometimes, can't you, with these young lads, with Casey and with Cresswell, that it might do more harm than good throwing them in at centre half in a competitive game. I don't think that Oliver Casey, I know he got a lot of stick when he got skinned at Crawley, but that's more about inexperience than like a pace. He wasn't ready to turn and make his interception. And I think it will be a huge risk to have Cresswell, that crew sort of on the bench, and it brings in players like Leif Davis as well, who are clearly really, really good at under 23 level, but would they not be better served at that stage in their career going on loan to the Championship or League One? So a tough one. You'd love them to sign someone, but you just get this sense that Orta and Radrizzani are probably terrified now about the January transfer window and probably will not use it.
I think it's a good topic to discuss, really, because we've been talking about it a lot, haven't we, that we would have expected to hear a little bit more about potential loan activity this window, just given how thin we are in certain positions and how much we rely on first team players. Obviously there's rumours of Alioski leaving us, which I have on good authority is not to Galatasaray, which is a nice starting point, but he is coming to the end of his contract. He's not signed a new one yet. You wouldn't be surprised to see him go. If he does, then it looks likely that Dallas would have to drop back into that left-back position. But then, Dallas is our utility man that we need to cover the other positions. So it's a weird one, like you say. Bielsa does like his very close-knit team, and he probably wants players in that are going to be there for the long term so that they can really buy into the ethos and not just actually learn how to play the football. But you kind of have to look at the bigger picture, don't you, and think, actually, in this instance, it might be the right decision to have someone on a short-term loan, like you say.
Yeah. You don't immediately look at our under-23s and think, yeah, they're the ones who need to come through now. I don't think you would immediately think anybody is ready for the first 11 I don't know if people feel the same way. Does anyone else think that?
I think you're right. I mean, we've obviously had Chris on a couple of times chatting to us about the young lads that are coming through, and we've asked him about who he thinks potentially would go out on loan, who he thinks are going to be the ones that start to cut through into that first team. Obviously, we've seen the likes of Jenkins make the bench a couple of times, but from a defence perspective, I think it's just been the case of the past few years that we're very thin on the ground, and actually finding good defenders these days, particularly youth ones that can come through our system and learn the ropes, they're pretty rare.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of noise, isn't there, about Gelhardt and Greenwood. They're the ones you always tend to hear about when people talk about the under-23s, but in terms of attacking midfielders and just goal scorers, I think we're reasonably well served. It is that, do we have backup for Calvin Phillips? No, not at all. Do we have enough injury-free centre-backs at the standard we need? No, not at the moment. It's paper thin. If Hoops sort of trips over a Lucozade bottle on the way to the ground or something, then it's game over, isn't it? It's kind of a very Coops thing to do, isn't it, I think?
You could be enjoying a proper good Yorkshire brew in your very own Leeds United mug from theterracestore.com. With plenty to choose from, you can enjoy it even more with your very own discount code. All you have to do is fill your basket and add RITGK15 at the end to get 15% off your shop. As always, we'd love to know what you buy, so drop us a tweet at RITGK. Enjoy! Let's move on to something more positive. Rafinha was last night's man of the match. Another goal in what is fast becoming a lucky maroon kit for him. He's great, isn't he? And we've got an absolute steal at 17 million or whatever it was.
Oh, he is. He's just getting better, isn't he? In that maroon kit, seems to definitely fancy it. It's probably similar to the Wren kit, perhaps. I'm not sure, but I think it were Matt B made a point a few weeks ago on the podcast about Rafinha. Now he could potentially star he's tipped him to star in the 2022 World Cup for Brazil. And I just think on current form, if he keeps doing what he's doing, then it's only a matter of time until he gets an international call up, because, like you said, £17 million is an absolute snip. And we spoke earlier, Matt mentioned there about St. Maximin, as a potential player that you'd like to look at. And I think they'd be asking for silly money, over 50 million for a player like that. And I don't think he's any better than Rafinha and even Jackie Harrison. I think right now he's absolutely bang on form. I wouldn't dislodge him with anyone right now, them two. But going back to Rafinha, yeah, he's absolutely head and shoulders above anyone we've got at the moment. And he's starting to build a really good partnership with Rodrigo, and you saw that it was evident last night against Newcastle. They linked up really, really well at times, and it's definitely good to see that they're starting to build that connection, because talking to Rodrigo, we've been a few question marks. We talked heavily about him on last week's pod about his best position, all that jazz, and he's struggling to get into the game. He was brilliant last night, and I think Rafinha definitely helped him ease into the game. And like I said, the more them two play together, the more connectivity they're going to have, and the better we're going to be as a team, because right now, if we continue how we played last night, I think the future's looking bright for them too.
An absolutely brilliant double acts, aren't they? I know he's Spanish international, but he is Brazilian, isn't he, Rodrigo? So we call them, the boys from Brazil. Do sort of link up ever so well, don't they? You feel a bit sorry for Bamford sometimes. You see their sort of almost psychic link-up play. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Yeah, he's just such an exciting player. You can see you just watch the defenders back off when he gets the ball. It's brilliant to watch.
I was just going to say, on the topic of Bamford, he obviously had a bit of an off night last night, and Roberts was actually an improvement when he came on, which isn't something we've said for a while. We were chatting about this earlier, but I think when you've got so much reliance on a striker like we have with Bamford, and probably he's put a lot of pressure on himself because he started the season so well, it's going to take its toll mentally as well as physically, isn't it? Yeah,
he looked off the boil again yesterday, didn't he? That's a couple of games in a row now. He's it seems a bit lost, doesn't he? Like you said, he's had a great start to the season, and we've been blessed with his form, haven't we, in a way? And I think when you see him as very little touches in a game and link up plays as he does, we do question it, don't we? And think, he seems to be off the boil. And you kind of do have that kind of holy trinity forming already with Rafinha, Rodrigo and Harrison, because they look fantastic, and Bamford just looked like a spare part at times, didn't he, last night? But I think over time, it's, they'll click, literally. I think it's going to take time. I think we're learning each game by the looks of things, which is good to see. But who would have thought Patrick Bamford be having double figures at the start of the season? Nobody did they? And I think, like you said, Tyler Roberts has surprised a fair few people, and probably myself and a couple of us guys on the podcast included, because we were saying he needed a loan out of the club, but Bielsa backed him, and I think Roberts is starting to show with a few really impressive cameo appearances.
Yeah, I agree again. Bamford was almost as heavy-legged as he was against Brighton last night, and you watched him doing things that... well, I don't know. They sort of always disappoint me, and I see his wasted energy with strikers when he sort of he chases down the keeper to the ball to see if he can nick it off his feet, and you're just thinking, oh, come on, he almost plays like a very old-fashioned lone centre forward, and you just wonder sometimes if he's drifting back to bad habits occasionally. In context, he's probably had a bad or a lacklustre 2 or 3 games, and you're right, not taking anything away from him. He has been sensational this season. You wonder, don't you, and you could probably say this with a lot of the players, the impact of not having fans in the ground is going to be a downer. The impact of being in a lockdown situation where you can't, go out to, I don't know what footballers do nowadays. Well, they get Nando's, don't they, a lot? You can't get a Nando's anymore. It must be a bit of a downer for your average Premier League footballer now. So it might be partially down to that. He might have a bit of lockdown fatigue. Who knows? But he didn't look himself at all, did he? And when he came off, I think, Vic, you said something earlier, Bielsa did almost give him a bit of a sideways glance that he wasn't particularly happy with him giving the ball away in the lead up to the Newcastle goal. And to say that Roberts was a refreshing change really says it all in comparison, and taking nothing away from Roberts at all, because I think you're right, Matt. He has played really well, actually, the last 2 times he's come on as a sub, but he isn't an out-and-out striker like Bamford. He does different things, but it just shows you how our expectations have grown of Patrick Bamford, that he's got into double figures, and everyone had just written him off, haven't they? He was responding to those tweets, wasn't he, at the start of the season? Oh, here we go again. When people said he's only ever scored 1 goal in the Premier League and he's not good enough, and spend some money on a striker right now. So he's overcome a lot. I think he'll get through it. I think he will bounce back.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, a part of me wonders if there's some correlation between Bamford and Click, because, we've been talking for a few weeks that Click's not looked himself. He's not really had the creativity that we're used to seeing from him. And obviously he was dropped from the starting lineup for last night's match. Came on later in the game, but by that point, obviously, Bamford was pretty much going off as well. So I wonder if there's potentially some correlation there, that Bamford's not getting quite the same service, or he's, not quite the same movement from the squad that's starting, whatever it might be. So we put it out on social media for you guys to give us your thoughts on last night's match. So just run through a couple of those. Bobby Grasler says Rodrigo was quality tonight, probably his best performance for us. Alan says we're still not creating enough from against the bottom teams. Defenders were all over the shop with no clue and relying on the keeper too much. We'll take the points but must improve. Mick says we made it hard for ourselves. We should have had a much easier night, but 3 points. 26 at the halfway point, 14 clear of 18th. A couple of wins and a couple of draws and it's job done. And Keza says, I think we can all agree that we need to sign Harrison permanently while we can. Well, I think that's probably on the radar for summer. I would hope it is. But what do you guys make to some of those comments? I think they're pretty much on par with what we've talked about already.
Yeah, I just love the name Bobby Grasler. It's a cracking name. I think Harrison on permanent, yeah, definitely. I think, is it 8 or 10 million, is it? We've already agreed at the end of the season. Be an absolute snip. So, yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with them all, really.
Hi, I'm Don Matteo, and when I'm sat in the rock bar having a pint, there's nothing better than reading and listening to Right in the GaryKellys.com.
So this week it was confirmed that the San Francisco 49ers group had increased its minority ownership of the club to 37%. And 49ers Enterprises Parag Marath has been appointed as Leeds United's vice chairman. So who better to dig deeper into this deal than our very own finance expert, Matt BB. Matt, what does this deal mean for the club, really?
This is one of those deals where on the face of it, in the modern football world or in the business world generally, putting £65 million into a business might, or in some respects, seem like small potatoes, but it is so much more than that. Let's to start with, you want to reflect on where we were when Radrizzani bought Leeds United and paid, I think, conservatively about £45 million to Chileno to buy him out all in. If you look at what was paid this week, then that means that his investment has gone in, crikey, almost 8 times the amount. And, the club is worth now close to £300 million. So when you have that sort of growth in a business or that growth in value, you can see why the San Francisco 49ers want in. And in terms of what they will do, they will bring networks of finance companies and financiers and other backers. You saw that the co-founder of YouTube is in on this investment as well. You will see as well their expertise in terms of things like social media, and tech at the ground, and in terms of how they market themselves. It's all of that expertise and all of those networks that they will bring in. I mean, if you want to sort of put it in context as well, the closest you can get probably to someone as big as the 49ers will be the Red Sox. And obviously those are the guys who are behind the purchase of Liverpool. So it's a big thing for these. It's not, I think some people look at it a bit simplistically, understandably, and they say, oh, well, what, £60 million? We spent £100 million this summer. But it is that expertise. It's what they can bring in terms of what they can do for our facilities as well. They obviously very famously moved the 49ers away from Candlestick Park, which is their sort of historic home. The Beatles played at Candlestick Park, didn't they? I mean, the Police did a big gig there in the 80s. I'm showing my age now. It was, it's an iconic ground in itself. So that they have successfully made that transition. It's a big thing. And I'll keep saying it again. It's the expertise and the networks that a business like that brings to Leeds that makes you up to that next level. So a big thing for Leeds, this really needed. I think we've seen, haven't we? We've been talking tonight about, God, should we invest in the January transfer window? Because we're not at that next level. We still have to watch our pennies. It's not as dire as it was in League One, obviously. When we say watch our pennies, we could probably go out and spend, without batting an eyelid, sort of £10 million on a player, but we aren't quite at that level. This would put you up amongst, I'll be very careful about what clubs I mention, up amongst the Liverpools and the Man Cities in terms of where you sit financially. So really positive. And having him on the board as well. Having Parag Marath on the board day to day is also really important. If you look at the strength in terms of the leadership team that will bring, when a player comes to talk to Leeds United, that they will get, much more the royal treatment, and that they will have that sort of expertise around contracts, around allowing people and players to fully monetize their own sponsorship, their own sort of intellectual property stuff like that. That expertise is there. So I'm really excited about it. But you can quote me on that in a couple of years' time, can't you?
I think you're right, though. It's about so much more than the money, which a lot of people will look at it as. It is that expertise and the kind of experience in business, I suppose, and how we make Leeds United a global brand rather than just the football club, which is obviously how we fans look at it. I think one thing that potentially fans may be a little bit cautious of, and you have flagged it there, that they moved the 49ers ground. Like, is there a risk of, renaming rights, or like you say, even actually a ground move should 49ers have this consistent increase in stake in the club over the next few years?
Well, of course, San Francisco has a a number of iconic brands sort of based there, doesn't it? Or nearby. Google, Levi Strauss, PayPal. So is there a risk that will become the PayPal arena in the next 2 years? I don't know. I mean, I think if I was going to say sort of look at the positives, Candlestick Park was outdated. It was still one of the biggest grounds in the NFL. It had that history, it had that background, and I think, I would not be surprised, given it's such a big asset, that they will explore how to fully realise its commercial potential. But I mean, look at the payoffs that they've had in San Francisco. I mean, they have things like they've effectively got a school built into the Levi Stadium. They work with all of the local schools and colleges, and this is I'm again showing my sort of other side as a school governor now, but they promote science and technology teaching and mathematics there, and they do this in this kind of virtual classroom where famous 49ers players are sort of, I don't know what on earth they're doing, kicking a Hail Mary or having a touchdown or whatever the hell they do in American football, in a maths based thing. They have kept their place, I think what I'm trying to say, at the heart of the community, but they've delivered. Probably, I think it was until about 2 or 3 years ago when they started building all the stadia in Qatar, the world's most technologically advanced spectator stadium. But I think that they're not daft. That I think they know that Leeds United is a powerful brand in English and European football. But I don't know. I mean, I'm probably, a total sellout. It wouldn't upset me 100% if we did have a renaming of the stadium, if someone sponsors to do it. But I fear I would be in the minority on that one. Do you think that's fair?
I think you'd probably be in the minority.
I think it goes back to that conversation of Pistol Pete Risdale's Nike Stadium kind of dream and plans that he had, and not too in the near future or distant future, or past, should I say, is the Red Bull Arena under the GFH days. Remember that talk we had, and a lot of fans were up for it, to be honest with you. But I think the San Francisco 49ers have been on board with us now 2 or 3 years, have they? They'll know the tradition and the values of the football club. It's not like they've literally just come in and invested now and said we're going to change to a red and white kit and rename the stadium. So I'd like to think, that they've been around the club, they know what we are and what we're about, and don't mess around with certain things of the club's tradition, because we saw what happened when they pissed around with a football badge. So
I'm not convinced myself. I think they will be sensitive to it, and I think you're right. We've been around the club long enough now to know what matters to us. But at the end of the day, they're businessmen, and I think if we've seen plenty of mock-ups of what Ellen Road could look like if it had the West Stand extended and everything else, and it's a 60,000 seater or whatever. But realistically, if you can build an all singing, all dancing stadium like from scratch, potentially on the same plot like Spurs have done, then you're probably going to do that rather than try and redevelop something that's already there. And let's face it, a bit of a shed is our shed, but it's a bit of a shed. But I think that I'd like to think anyway that there's little risk of us moving away from Ellen Road, the plot, because of the plans with the new training ground and the academy and everything else. So watch this space, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years' time, if we've established ourselves in European football or whatever it might be, if there's a new ground going up on the Park and Ride car park.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that where other American companies have purchased English or UK clubs, they haven't generally renamed their stadiums. I mean, they've kept to that ridiculous theatre of dreams, obviously, haven't they? But that's kind of obviously very inappropriate over the last few years now. But it's still Old Trafford, and Anfield is Anfield. I think the only person who's sort of who's really sort of got stuck into this, sort of not out of character, but someone like Mike Ashley, didn't he try and rename St James's Park something like the Sports Direct Arena or something like that?
I think it is like technically the Sports Direct Arena or something. I don't know.
I think it's going to be the House of Fraser Arena next season, isn't it? But just going back on your point with the NFL link, I think you potentially, it could Ellen Road the plot be kind of suitable for an NFL team to play, hence like Tottenham Hotspurs and Wembley as well. But if that is the case, are we going to start loaning our pitch or selling our pitch for 300 grand to fellow football clubs, you reckon?
Paid for Harry Kane for a week, didn't we?
Well, that's it, yeah.
No, I honestly think that's a really interesting topic because NFL is growing massively in this country. And obviously they want this kind of cross-sport, international fan base buying into Leeds United, the football club. But like I say, in 5 years, if they think it's worth the money to build a new stadium, you better believe that they're going to build it ready for NFL games as well.
They're in it for a reason, aren't they? They're in it for a reason.
100%.
And Leeds is seen as one of the fastest growing cities outside of London, and the north of England in the UK really doesn't have that NFL presence, does it, at the moment? Old Trafford isn't built for it. Anfield isn't built for it. You're only looking down the London area as well, which is so. Yeah, it is the greater good. Why are they involved? And yeah, you would think that is probably the long term plan of the 49ers. Hence why the increase of ownership that we've seen this week.
In the current marketplace, investors, the money is still there, irrespective of what's going on in the outside world. Premier League football is one of these commodities. Even when there's nobody in the grounds, it's still making a fortune. It's not the full 100% you would normally make, but it is still almost a safe haven for an investor. So that will in no small part be on the minds of people like the 49ers. And I think you will see a lot more. I would hazard a guess as to say that they may well want to increase their stake.
I think that's it, isn't it? It's part of the conversation of what's the long-term plan. Is it that they buy Rads out? Does Rads stick around and still kind of run the day-to-day at the club? Does he take his money and run and buy another club and do the same thing? I think it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. I'd just like to think that this time round we've got the right men in, the people that, like you say, they've been around the club a couple of years and they can be more sensitive to what matters to the fans, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that spend the money. So
sure, and Rads hasn't made it a secret that he wants to bring on the right investors to the club. He's been open about that from day one, isn't he? So yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I think the success of the team will play a big factor in what actually happens with the 49ers. And like you mentioned earlier, that 5-year plan of getting to European football, I think, it all depends on how we progress as a team and as a football club.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to see Chad Hurley's comments about the fact, he's obviously involved in the investment group, but he just mentioned something. Someone asked him, like, if he's going to invest in X, Y, and Z moving forward. And he said he's just looking at what makes sense financially at the minute. He's looking at the opportunities for growth. So for someone of that size and stature to kind of see Leeds United as an opportunity for him to make money when he's probably getting opportunities thrown at him every day, that can only say good things about where we're going as a club.
Yeah, totally. It goes back to, I think, a club was worth £44 million 3 years ago and it's worth nearly £300 million today. It tells its own story, doesn't it? I mean, I saw another graphic that I think the squad was worth about, it's hard to believe when you think back to the days of Peltier and co, that it was even worth £30 million apparently in 2016, but worth conservatively £180 million today. So they have, to sound like the X Factors now, they've been on a journey, haven't they? And it's been very, very interesting how much they've grown. This is a real indictment, though, of what Radrizzani has built, the fact he's managed to bring on an investor like this. I mean, it wouldn't be the same unless I mentioned this old gentleman. Imagine Ken Bates being approached by the San Francisco 49ers. This would never in a million years have happened, would it? So,
No, big improvement.
Yeah.
We've got a chance for you to win a £25 voucher to spend on theterracestore.com. To enter, all you have to do is tell us who this ex-Leeds United player is.
I was a young lad at Leeds, and I can remember getting off the bus thinking I've got a chance of starting here.
So far, no one has got it right, so we're going to give you a clue, or a couple of clues actually. This player came through the academy, and he was a defender. So to get your entry in, all you have to do is head over to Twitter and tweet us at RITGK with your answer. It's as easy as that. So time for a game of Guess Who. The rules are obviously simple. I'm going to give you 3 clues and you've got to guess who the person is that has some kind of historical connection to Leeds United. Buzz in when you know the answer. Before we get going, let's try out those all-important buzzers. So Matt M, this is yours.
Patrick Bamford.
And Matt BB, this is yours.
This is LUTV and we're joined by the Leeds United chairman, Ken Bates. Good afternoon, chairman.
Afternoon, Ben. Afternoon, folks.
So, clue number 1. This player started their career at Torquay United and ended it at Garforth Town.
Ooh.
Pass.
Right. Clue number 2. This player made 8 appearances for the senior England team between the years of 1991 and 1993.
Ex-Leeds player.
Yep.
What year was it? 90...
91 to 93, made 8 appearances for the England team, senior team.
I want to point out I'm not looking at Google at this stage.
Better not be.
Clearly he is if he's telling you.
If I give you the last clue, you'll definitely get it, I think. So I'll give you a little bit longer to try and think about who it might be. So clue 1 was that they started at Torquay and ended it at Garforth Town. Clue 2 was 8 appearances for England between 91 and 93.
Oh, I know.
This is LUTV and we're joined by the Leeds United chairman, Ken Bates. Good afternoon, chairman.
Afternoon, Ben. Afternoon, folks.
Who do you think it is, Matt B? Lee Sharp. Correct. That's a great shout.
Lee bloody Sharp. I didn't realise he finished his career at Garforth.
Can I tell you what my third clue was? This player appeared on Celebrity Love Island alongside Alan Best in 2005. And that's what he'll forever be remembered for.
Still one of my favourite seasons, that one.
That was so good.
I had no idea he finished his career at Garforth.
I think he maybe retired and then came back and actually it just didn't work out.
Well, I think he retired in 96 when he left Manchester United, didn't he? Let's be honest.
Well, that's us for this week. A little midweek catch-up for you. Please do leave us a review and let us know what you think and, give us a share across social media. Also, make sure that you enter the competition as well so you can get yourself that Terrace Store voucher. We'll be back soon with a recap on the latest results and any transfer window comings and goings. Speak to you then.